Hi, it's Rob from the Brush and Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint a Black Templars Assault Intercessor. If you'd like to support the channel, our Ko-fi and Patreon page is linked below. Now onto the video. So the first colour we're going to use is Vallejo White. I'm just going to use this to do the pauldrons on the shoulder pads. Now the new Templars release, I thought it'd be a good time to update the last Templars video I did and did a more normal marine rather than having the lieutenant that was previously painted. So I thought I'd do one of the Assault Intercessors from the Imperium magazine and paint him up as a Black Templar. So he's had the Ultramarines icon and the Assault icon cut from his shoulder pads. So they're just plain and smooth-ish. Next colour I'm going to use is Citadel Mephiston Red. I'm going to use this to do the casing on both the chainsword and the bolt weapon in his other hand. Also use this to do the trim on the pauldrons too, as that designates him as an assault troop for the Black Templars. Next up, a little bit of Citadel Rakarth flesh. I'm going to use this to do the Aquila on his chest. Now we're going to use some Citadel Iron Hand Steel. I'm going to use this to do all the metallic silvery parts, so the teeth on the chainsword, the little kind of engine thing on the back of it, parts of the bolt pistol, the little tubes on the front of his helmet, and also some pieces of his backpack as well. So you've got the exhaust for the power pack at the top and the ones down the bottom too. Now I'm going to use some Citadel Baneblade Brown. I'm going to use this to do his pouches and belt. Going to start off on the shades now. We're going to start with the contrast paint, Citadel Apothecary White, which is ideal for doing the shading on any white parts of miniatures, I think. Gives that a nice grey shade which isn't too dark, isn't too light. It works quite nicely as a shade for white parts of a miniature. Next we're going to use some Citadel Seraphim Sepia. This is going to be to do the Rakarth flesh on that Aquila on his chest. Like so. Next up, Citadel Druchii Violet. We're going to use this to do all of the sections of red on the miniature. If you hear any cat noises in the background, it's quite possibly the two kittens which are fighting away on the couch over there. Next up is Citadel Retributor Armour. I'm going to use this to do some decorations or icons on the marine, and also the pommel and the crosspiece of his chainsword. Previously I've done the Aquila on the chest in gold as well, because it does look quite nice in gold. But I'm following the wickier colours, so that'll be going to a nice bone colour. We're using Snakebite leather contrast paint here, and this is going over the Baneblade brown, which gives those patches a really nice leathery colour. I'm going to use some Citadel Nuln Oil. This is going to be to do all of the silvery metallic, so the areas where we use that Iron Hand steel colour. Do really like these assault intercessors. Bit of a shame they haven't got the jump packs, but they do look really cool, very dynamic miniatures. Now we're going to use some Citadel Agrax Earthshade, and this is going to be to paint up the gold and shade that. We're going to start highlighting the black initially. We're going to use Vallejo German Grey to do that. Now, if you have made any slips with the brush and got any of the other colours on the miniature, then just paint over those bits, get them to the right colour, and when we start reapplying these colours, everything will be ready to go. So when you're reapplying applying the German Grey, you want to be thinking about where the light is catching it and how it's going to highlight the black. You don't want to paint all of the miniature with the German Grey, because otherwise you'll end up with a grey marine rather than a black one. So instead we're going to be using the German Grey to do some highlights, and then the Mechanicus Standard Grey to do some edge highlights, so you're keeping that dark blackness to them. Not too keen on the very light or very bluish kind of highlights to the Black Templars, or Black Marines in general, to be honest, as they do, I think, take away from the black armour and make it look a little bit too, not too sure, like Tron-like. For me, if it's black armour, it needs to be very dark. So next up, we're going to have Citadel Mephiston Red. I'm going to start reapplying the colour back to all of the red sections of the miniature. Much like you did with the German Grey, you want to make sure that you're thinking about where the light's going to catch it, and not making it go underneath the miniature or anything like that, so that you've still got the shade in those areas underneath. So now I'm going to use some Citadel Evil Sunz Scarlet. This is going to be to highlight the Mephiston Red. So again, thinking about where you have put the Mephiston Red, you're going to be using the Evil Sunz Scarlet to highlight that. So you want to leave the areas that are going to be darker with more Mephiston Red, areas that are going to be catching more light with more Evil Sunz Scarlet. The final highlight we're going to do on the red is using Citadel Wild Rider Red. We are going to do some edge highlights on these red sections. I'm going to use a little bit of Citadel Mephiston Red mixed with a little bit of white, and we're going to do the first highlight on the eye lenses. So we reapplied the Mephiston Red. We did about 2/3 of the back of the lens. Now we're doing the first highlight on those. Now we're going to add a little bit more white to the previous mix and highlight that. Tiny little bit more white to mix in with the previous mix. And finally we're going to use a little bit of white just to put a spot on the front of each lens in that dark area, and then a final really small highlight at the back of each lens. Slightly off camera there, sorry. Like so. Now I'm going to use Citadel Rakarth Flesh. I'm going to reapply the colour to the chest aquila. We want to be leaving the Seraphim Sepia within the recesses on that. So just highlighting each separate piece, just to bring that out so we can get that nice bone colour on the go. Now we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Ushabti bone. I'm going to cover about 50% of the area that we've just done with the Rakarth flesh. So about 50% of each of those little kind of feathers. About 50% of the area of the skull and the top pieces of the wings too. Now we've mixed a little bit of Vallejo White with the Ushabti bone. We're just going to highlight about 50% of the areas that we've just done with the Ushabti bone. Slightly off camera here, I'm sorry. Now we're working on the belt and the pouches, and we're going to use some Citadel Balor Brown. We'll be going around the edges and areas that are going to have been scraped and scuffed quite a bit. So around all the edges and the corners and the angles where the button would go through on the top piece there. Now we're going to add some Rakarth flesh to the Balor Brown. We're going to do the first highlight. Doing this exactly the same way, so horizontal strokes on the vertical corners and vertical strokes on the horizontal. That just give you that rough edge so that you haven't got a nice smooth line going down there. Now I'm going to use some Citadel Rakarth flesh to add to the previous mix so we get the final lighter shade, and we're just going to do exactly the same but covering less area so that you have that nice lighter leathery scuffed look. Now I'm going to use Citadel Iron Hand Steel. We're just going to add a few little highlights to the metallics. like so. Now I'm going to start working on the gold, so we're going to use Citadel Retributor Armour. I'm going to reapply this to the gold areas, making sure that you leave the shaded sections underneath and on the underside of them. You don't want to have that Retributor Armour going all the way around to the underside as well, because you want to have that darker section as it is in the shade. We're now going to highlight that with Citadel Liberator Gold. So you want to do about 50% of the area that you've just done with the Retributor Armour with the Liberator Gold. Think about where the light will be catching it on the edges and on the larger surfaces and things like that. I'm going to add a little bit of Vallejo Modeler Chrome to the Liberator Gold and just do one final little highlight on that gold, mainly on the edges and a few of the flatter sections where you can add a bit more of that reflection. That will just give that really nice bright shine on those edges. I'm going to use Vallejo White just to start working on those pauldrons, get them a nice smooth white colour, so you may need to do a couple of layers. You can leave some of the Apothecary white shade on the underside if you want to. I did most of the pauldron with just plain white here because there isn't too much going on the underside. It's only a little tiny bit, so I just did the whole thing white. If it was slightly more angled, or there's a bit more area where it's going to be a bit more of a defined shade, I probably would have left a bit more on there. Now I'm going to start working on the Black Templars emblem. I'll link a video of how I've done it in the past here, is trying a new method. Not too keen on how it turned out, to be honest. Not 100% happy with it. But I wanted to try a new way of doing it and see if I could get it to work using a different technique. Kinda did, kinda didn't. But I'll link up the video of how I've done it previously. You can have a look if you want to freehand those and see which you reckon is the best. Basically use this to do a cross, then added a little bit of a triangle on each point of the cross, and cut out a little bit at the end of each one. Now we're just using a little bit of Vallejo White just to do the numeral 3 on his knee. This is how I approach these. I'm going to be doing a video of how to do these numbers in the near future. Like so. This is the finished Black Templars Assault Intercessor. I'd say really happy with how he turned out. Not too sure on the icons on the shoulder pads, but the rest of the miniature, really pleased with that. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media linked below. Thanks very much. If you like the channel and you enjoy the content and you'd like to support us, our Coffee and Patreon pages are linked below. Thanks very much.